Hey, it's Crane, and just got off the phone, or off the air as well, with Ryan Morrow, Clarion Project, clarionproject.org. He is the national security analyst for them, talking about Iran and the deal that we are looking to make with Iran, how it undermines not only our security, but our number one ally in the region, arguably, I would say, in the world, which is Israel. Netanyahu has been quite vocal in his opposition to this, as he was vocal about lecturing President Obama about the realities of security and dealing with evil regimes and organizations. So it brings us back to what Ryan addressed on the show tonight, which really gets me. Because the president's not a stupid man. He's not a moron, as I said. Not a moron. I just had a flash of, is it Animal House? Not recommending it, but saying. Anyway, what are we supposed to do, you moron? Well, it's certainly not this. Okay? And he was bringing me into the worldview of America causing the problems of why they hate us. And it goes, I've heard everything poverty to having Guantanamo Bay, Gitmo. People don't really understand that happened after 9/11, but nonetheless, you can look at the attacks over the 30 plus years of Islamic extremists, Islamic terrorists using the doctrine of Islam to justify their actions. Now, we do have reformers within Islam, like Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, but they get far less airtime than the Council for American Islamic Relations, which was an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial. But nonetheless, we are so off the mark when it comes to understanding our enemy and why they do what they do. They desire a worldwide caliphate. Shias and Sunnis disagree on how to get there and how to bring it upon the world, how to signal it, trigger it, if you will, Shia. Bottom line, after 9/11, we said never again, and there were all sorts of recriminations of why didn't people do more? Why didn't they connect the dots? I remember George W. Bush speaking to this. He said, people asked after 9/11, you remember after 9/11, everybody was pointing fingers, why didn't you connect the dots? And when you connect the dots, they say, why are you connecting the dots? Why are you doing this? They almost accuse you of being a warmonger for defending the United States. Then they give you the two options, do nothing or invade, which is, again, ridiculous, asinine in the sense of shaping a policy. There's so much we can do between those. And then we look at the fact of ascribing our values to people that do not have our values, seeing things that are not there, a willful blindness with Islamists, with Khameneists, with Islamic terrorists. And it's going to hurt really bad. I pray that it doesn't, but it's going to be awful when there's enough of a body count where more people are impacted by it directly. And they're going to be asking the questions I just mentioned. They're going to say, why didn't we do something about it? How on earth did we not support Israel and understand Israel deals with this on a daily basis in the sense of the survival of its government, but of its country? And I'm just stunned. And then it goes to education and the long-term approach about what are we teaching in schools and why political correctness has cost us the ability to have an honest conversation about terrorism. Well, without further ado, I do have a solution. Here's the solution: regime change in Iran, and an active support of regime change in Iran, making our case to not only the leaders of this country, making it to us, the American people, but also to the world. As Reagan shaped the narrative by telling the truth about communism, the evil empire. We can do the same with radical Islam and Islamism, and we can go to the doctrine of that, and we can support reformers within Islam who are true reformers, like Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. When groups do have ties to terror, we expose them and we show the body count, their victims, when we're telling the story about them, so people realize that this is not made up, this is real. We tell the truth about Israel, how Israel is not the problem but the solution in the Middle East when it comes to a government and society in the sense of individual freedoms. We make required reading Natan Sharansky's A Case for Democracy. That's something that should be happening. And when Israel is being either directly or indirectly thrown under the bus, we speak up and we stand with Israel. Things get very clear when the butcher's bill is high. And I pray that our enemies do not succeed in slaughtering more of us, Americans, Israelis, as people who want to be free. But I look at what's happened in the Middle East, of the slaughter of Christians and the slaughter of Jews, and the inability to articulate and define and recognize the difference between good and evil, whether they're groups, whether they're governments. The idea that we wouldn't confront regimes. And I look at a willful blindness from our president, and it's disturbing. And it's not going away. We do have an obligation. And America is extraordinary and special. And whether people choose to ignore it or not, it's happening. Our economic system, our foreign policy, of what we stand for culturally and what we believe in, the foundation of our country is under attack. And the least we can do is speak up and expose it. And recognizing that the way people will characterize our beliefs is already going to happen. They're already going to say what they're going to say and already shape the narrative. If we speak truth and love, if we are salt and light, I truly believe that we can transform our culture and we can transform our government policies. In closing, I'd just like to say that not everybody is always going to be convinced. Well, thank you, Captain Obvious. No, I mean, tonight we had a conversation about the minimum wage and increasing it, and the destructive nature and history of increasing the minimum wage and who actually earns it, and the size and the fact of who's actually supporting a family on it is a very low percentage, and it's an entry-level position, and 2.7% of the workforce earns it. And we look at the people who own like fast food restaurants, and they're not corporate bigwigs, but you know what, I don't even like speaking in that language because I don't care who owns them, in the sense of a federal government telling them how much they must pay somebody that's not set. That price is not set. It's set arbitrarily, and it's not set by the market. And the destructive nature of the most vulnerable, and the propaganda from the socialist left. And these people protesting, and remember, this is a union-backed movement. Don't take it personally, unions. I'm talking about not you as an individual union member. I'm talking about unions backing these protests because they want to set the wage, because that eliminates competition. pretty easy to understand the big picture. But I was talking to somebody and explaining how destructive the policy would be on the very people that they want to help, and she came back tonight. And nice woman, nice lady, had worked for the minimum wage. I think everybody has at some point during their life. And talked about how hard the work was. And I'm sitting there going, well, okay, the work's hard. What are you talking about? Yeah, the work's hard. Okay, and how, she was in a position that she was supporting. I said, okay, but even still, this policy is not going to help you. What about the consequence? And here's the reality of the policy. Yet the intention, the feeling, trumped the facts. The feelings in her mind and those supporting it trumped the truth. That's frightening. Especially when you're bringing this stuff up as respectful as you can be. So some people, won't learn, and that will be part of it. I do believe the vast majority of people will learn when they do see the consequence of it, because inevitably they will learn when they don't have a job when it comes to the minimum wage. Because sooner or later, that crisis, that economic crisis, that employment crisis, the employment crisis that we're seeing now in a part-time nation because of the disincentive to hire and the incentive to cut the workforce through Obamacare, you see it. Sooner or later, the people that are blaming will sooner or later blame the right person or policy or group. It'll take a while. They'll have to feel the impact of that, and they'll have to run out of all the other options, which means the pain lasts much longer. Crisis inevitably yields truth, because you must confront and solve the problem. The idea that it's like you have a bridge and there's a hole in the bridge. I've used this before. And people are falling through that hole and landing, and beat up. Some die. And there are those who say, you know what? We need to build more hospitals. Focus in on the health care for people falling through the bridge. And I think, you got to treat them. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Really, thank you. You think you should treat it? Yeah, that's it. I have to say that because there are some who say, you wouldn't fix it. You wouldn't help the people on the ground because you don't have a heart. I mean, asinine. I'm just tired of this. Nonetheless, you have the people falling through who want to focus in on the health care. I would say fix the Ripon Bridge. Fix it. Because until you do, people are going to drop off and drop off and drop off. Fix it. Crane Durham's nothing but truth. Live with honor in your life, compassion in your heart. Always keep the faith in Jesus Christ. And know that God knows you, God loves you, He created you, and you're worth it. Thanks. Tell me what you think.